so thank you very much. I'm going to take advantage of being on stage.
So I'm Beth, and I'm going to do a quick chat about not becoming a tester in 30 minutes, purely focusing on exploratory testing. So I am a tester by trade, we'll go with that, and I do have a blog and tweet a lot of opinionated things if you're interested in that. So who am I? I started out with testing 4 years ago, and then recently have got quite into learning more about how devs work and how that can make me a better tester. So I'd kind of like to transfer that into how I can help you become better devs by learning about what I do. So my main areas of interest are mobile testing, performance testing, which probably quite nicely ties into memory, agile testing processes, and if you don't want to talk to me about testing, which I totally get, I like board games, I like heavy metal, and I like food, especially cake. And since having this on my slide, I had one person tweet me a cake recipe, and it made my day. So if you've got any cake recipes, tweet me, because I'll probably bake it. So just to get more into what I'm actually going to be chatting about today, as I've learned last time I spoke here, I am really terrible at explaining what I do and who testers are. So I'm going to give a bit of an intro into that. What is exploratory testing? So what is an exploratory tester, as I feel like that's a subset of tester skills, and how that kind of drills a bit more into what exploratory testers do. For me, there are 3 schools of thought for exploratory testing approaches that will be able to tie into how you do dev work, and understand like how to communicate with the tester about what they've been looking at when they say, oh, I've done some exploratory testing on this, so you actually know where they're coming from. Because sometimes it's like, oh, I have a gut feeling about this as a tester, and then they sound a little bit crazy coming to you when there's a problem, because saying I have a feeling isn't really good at explaining something logical. So starting off, what is a tester? An official definition is a person who independently and objectively analyses the quality of criteria of a product with the aim of providing information to stakeholders. Stakeholders being developers, project managers, or general higher up business. So when they're communicating, they'd have to cater what they're talking about to explain what they're doing. So general skill set, as kind of given credit to one of the testers in my team, came up with a list of things that he felt testers were. So his name is Tristan Marshall. If anyone would like to check him out, I don't even think he has Twitter. Basically a technophobe. So they're an investigator, first and foremost. They have to be objective about what they're doing, as per the definition of a tester. They are basically an information gatherer. We go around holding information, and then we'll just throw it out in some sort of more eloquent way than we gathered it in the first place. To save on costs, we're involved from the SDLC, so sometimes as a tester it's not the most exciting thing getting involved in strategy and planning and reading documentation. Some people don't think testers should be involved in that, but it might save money in the long run if we go, why are you doing that this early on? So I put this one in as has emotional intelligence. So for this one, it wasn't just coming from a has people skills and can actually communicate what they're doing. It's a what is the user doing with this system, and how can I understand why they're using it the way they're using it to look at it. And it's challenging to work with, basically, and wanting to get the best out of your work and just produce a good quality product, as most devs would want to do as well. We want to get the best out of it, but I appreciate we don't do it in the best way, so hopefully this will help understand a little bit better. So what is exploratory testing? It is a hands-on approach from testing that requires minimum planning in terms of upfront documentation and explanation, and maximum execution, so you get more out of it than you actually put in. Advantages of that would be it's a bit faster, you'll get something out of it a lot earlier on than if you did a whole upfront analysis. You find bugs quickly, so you'll probably get a bit more output and you'll see something in 10 minutes rather than 3 hours. It gives you a chance to focus in on an allotted time. The disadvantages, which hopefully I will get to negate with this talk, and that you might be able to help out with in future, is apparently it is randomly implemented. an invented, we just go in there, click some things, magic happens. That it is dependent on tester knowledge and skill or whoever's working on it, and you have a risk of missing bugs. So, disadvantage number one, randomly implemented and invented. We're not just going there clicking around at random things. We've already initially targeted what we want to look at and why using the 3 main schools of thought. So we're not just going, here's a whole target board and we want to hit everything. We kind of go, here's an area that we want to look at. Dependent on tester knowledge and skill, it's the same as anything that you do in life. You're not going to be great at it the first time round. You do build on it, and there is a logical process to exploratory testing instead of just clicking about. And a risk of missing bugs, well, if I went in and found every bug that ever existed, I'd probably look like this by the end of it. So that's always a risk with anything that you do in building a product. So what is exploratory testing? To summarise, it's not just clicking around. There is a logical approach to it, and there is a skill. So much like in Skyrim or any video game that you build skill on, you get better at it, you get points, you get to do stuff and understand better. So a couple of quotes about what exploratory testing is. So Marat Perhayavi is probably what I consider a leading exploratory tester. Whoever needs to be testing needs to be learning, and learning needs to change what you're doing. So if you've understood something different about a system, you need to change the way that you approach that system. So to summarise, these are the 3 main areas that I think an exploratory tester needs to build their skills in, is being investigative, objective, and gathering information in a more efficient way. And Alex Schlotterbeck has also summarised that, saying we need an exploratory test to be less about intuition and experience, saying I have a gut feeling, or this doesn't look right, and more about following logical processes and behaviours and making it a teachable skill. So 3 schools of thought. There is strategy, scenario, and freestyle or heuristic. Freestyle is that clicking around that everyone thinks exploratory testing is, but there is actually a logical approach to it the more skills you build up in the area. So I'll start off with strategy. So this is having a rough plan ahead of time. I need to look at areas X, Y, Z. I came up with 50 quick ideas of what I want to look at, but I've realised that 40 of them aren't actually valuable, so I'm only going to look at 10 of them. It's reduced the amount of time that I'm putting into this, but I'm still getting as much value out of it as I can with my half-an-hour time slot. And it's chatting with a dev and seeing what areas of risk are, so there's a lot of thought that goes into it without actually having to sit there and write a whole process to approach. The second one is scenario. So this is testing based on an area of interest. So you want to learn more about how a system works. You might be new to a system, so you're not 100% sure what you're going to be looking at. So the Ministry of Tests has come up with personas. So if you're new to an entire system, sometimes just sitting there and going through a load of documentation, going through something that devs have written and playing around with areas, you can go, I'm a 60-year-old lady called Margaret and I like to click on every little thing to navigate through the site. How does this actually work for me? And what is the user experience at the end of that? So you can limit how you're going to be, what you're going to look at just by saying these are the areas that I want to target. And the third one, which I'll probably talk about a lot more because it's my favourite one, is ad hoc testing. So I normally do this one, I have a gut feeling about it, but I still try and plan around in a way. So it's a lot like maths where you've got PEMDAS or BODMAS to solve an equation. You can use mnemonics or little sort of reminders, like a few hiccups at Goldilocks, to get you started in this is a more logical thing rather than just going, I'll see what that does, because that doesn't help anybody in the long run. So if you go around clicking, you can't recreate a bug if you find it, because you've just gone, oh, well, I kind of did that thing. Whereas if you follow sort of general logical rules, it's going to eliminate that whole, oh, I did that, maybe. And then trying to demonstrate that afterwards if you do find something wrong. So tips to get started as a tester that will probably help out as a developer when we come to ask you questions on what you want to know is focus on goals. So if they come to you going, I have a rough idea about this thing, you can kind of help narrow down what we want to look at, when things are going to be, may or may not be a risk in the system. Have a rough plan. So for me, it's normally a couple of bullet points to say, oh, this is areas that I kind of want to look at today. I've got half an hour, this is all I'm going to look at to stop me going off on a tangent and going, oh, that looks a bit weird, and then end up in some sort of rabbit hole of scary place. Keep clear records. So for me, the biggest thing I like to do was, on a project I learned that the developers, due to a language barrier of them being Spanish, I screen recorded everything, and then if I didn't find anything wrong, I just deleted that 20-minute screen recording, but if I did, I could crop it down to 2 minutes and go, here's what I did, here's how you can recreate that problem. So rather than just going, oh, well, I clicked around here and then demonstrate it, I can go, here's actual hard evidence of what I've done, and give it to the developer or whoever's working on it. Exploratory is a skill you learn, so it's not just for testers, you can use it in other parts of the system. BAs quite regularly have used it when they're doing things like UAT or poking around to see if they're quite happy with how everything looks, or designers will go, oh, I didn't quite mean that. And understand the risks, so I think the biggest part of that is actually having a communication with your team. And then the final one for me was expanding my critical thinking skills. So rather than just kind of having in the box, this is what the system's meant to look like, kind of going outside of it and having a think about it. So I will post this on Twitter afterwards because I've realised it is very small. These kind of help me with unambiguous questions when having conversations, so I can go, who will be using the system? Is it an older lady? Is it a 20-year-old man? Or is it a child? What will it be doing with the system? So, for example, I work at Sky Betting and Gaming, so it's a gambling site. They're going to want to find things quite quickly to place bets. How will the system do what they want it to do, and how are they going to get there? And what will stop the users doing the thing that they want to do, to like limit what I want to look at that point in time. Another one that I do find quite helpful to stop me going on a path of rabbit hole of strange thought is, if it looks like a duck, swims like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck, until it's not, because they're all ducks. They all quack,